Students, we are going to discuss the chapter number 1, resources and development, and today I'm going to provide you information about the term resource. What do we mean by the term resource? Okay, and how these resources they help the human beings in different ways to satisfy their needs, and the classification of resources. So the term resources, we are very much well acquainted with the term resources. We have heard about this term resources, okay, from the very junior classes, as well as we are using the term resource, okay, many a times. So the term resource basically refers to any kind of material, which can satisfy the need of the human beings are known as the resources. Okay, so these materials can be anything. It may be the natural, it may be the man-made and all. Okay, for example, I am using this pen to write on a piece of paper, so it's a resource. Okay, we are taking help of the book to get knowledge, so it is a resource. Okay, we are living in the house, it provides us with shelter, it's a resource. The plants in our surrounding, they provide us with fruits, okay, they provide us with oxygen and also it's a resource. The petroleum which we extract from the underground, we use it, okay, for running the vehicles and also it's a resource. So resources can be any material. Okay, resources can be any material which has the satisfied, okay, to help the human beings, which has the capacity to help the human beings, are known as the resources. So you can get here the definition of resource. See, so everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs, provided it is technologically accessible, economically feasible and culturally acceptable, can be termed as a resource. Okay, so any materials in our environment, okay, which can help us to satisfy our needs, okay, we are considered as a resource. But it must be technologically accessible. Technologically accessible means we must have the adequate technology to use those resources. Okay, it must be economically feasible and it must be economically affordable, as well as accepted in the society, culturally acceptable. Okay, it must be acceptable in the society. So here you can see I have put some images, okay, of some living and non-living components actually. Okay, so all these images, okay, which you can see here, these are the resources actually, they are resources. Okay, so not only these images which I am showing here, they are resources, but apart from this also, okay, any kind of living and non-living component on the earth, okay, which helps the human beings, are considered as a resource. So you can see the living and the non-living components are there. Okay, so these are all resources. So the resources can be classified into different categories. The resources can be categorized into different categories. Okay, there are different bases of classifying the resources. On the basis of origin, the resources can be classified. The resources can be classified on the basis of exhaustibility. The resources can be classified on the basis of ownership, and the resources can be classified on the basis of status of development. Okay, so there are different ways. Okay, there are different ways of classification of the resources. Okay, there are different bases of classifying the resources. So let us know in details about the different types of resources. Let us know in details about the classification of these resources. On the basis of origin, okay, on the basis of origin, the resources can be classified into two broad categories, that are the biotic resource and abiotic resources. So biotic and abiotic, okay, the term biotic and abiotic we have studied in our junior classes also. Okay, biotic means the living component and abiotic means the non-living component. So biotic resources include all the living creatures, okay, on the earth, means all the living components on the earth, okay, they form the biotic resources. So these resources are obtained from the biosphere and have life, such as human beings, flora and fauna, the fisheries, livestock, etc. So what are biotic resources? Biotic resources has life in it. Okay, the living components on the earth, okay, are considered as the biotic resources, such as the human beings, the flora and fauna, that is the plants and the animals, the fisheries, the livestock, that is the cattle, goats and also, okay, etc. So any kind of living component on the earth's surface are the biotic resources. Even the microorganisms, okay, even the microorganisms and also, okay, they are also considered as a resource because they help in maintaining the fertility of the soil. They help in decomposing the dead remains of the plants and the animals. Okay. On the other hand, abiotic resources include the non-living components on the earth's surface. Abiotic resources include the non-living components of the earth's surface. See, abiotic resources. All those things which are composed of non-living things are called abiotic resources. For example, the rocks and the metals. Okay, so any kind of non-living materials, okay, any kind of non-living component which can help the human being, okay, which can help the human beings to carry out their work, okay, to satisfy their needs are known as the abiotic resources. For example, the fossil fuels, the metals, okay, any kind of non-living component. For example, this pencil. The pencil is a non-living component, isn't it? But we are using this pencil for writing actually, isn't it? So it's a resource. Okay. So any kind of non-living component, okay, which can help the human beings to satisfy their demands are considered as a abiotic resource. So on the basis of origin, the resources can be classified into two broad categories: abiotic resource and biotic resource. Next, on the basis of exhaustibility. On the basis of exhaustibility, the resources can be classified into two types, that is the renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Okay. Renewable resources include those resources which can be renewed again and again, okay, which gets renewed again and again. For example, the water, okay, the plants, the animals, okay, the solar energy and all, okay, these are the examples of renewable resources. See. The resources which can be renewed or reproduced by physical, chemical or mechanical processes are known as the renewable or replenishable resources, such as the water, plants, etc. So water is renewable in nature, isn't it? The water bodies, from the water bodies, okay, evaporation takes place and the water gets converted into water vapor. So this water vapor, it reaches the higher layer of the atmosphere where condensation starts and the water vapor gets converted into the water droplets and again it falls on the earth's surface as rainfall. So like this way the cyclic process of the water is being maintained on the earth's surface. The plants, they give the seeds and all, fruits and all, okay, and from these seeds we see the new plants, okay, they take birth actually. So like this way, okay, these resources, they maintain its continuity on the earth's surface. Okay, so such resources which are renewable in nature, such resources which can be renewed are known as the non-renewable resources. Non-renewable resources. These resources occur over a long geological time. Minerals and fossil fuels are examples of such resources. And these resources, it takes millions of years in their formations, such as fossil fuels, minerals, etc. So what are non-renewable resources? Non-renewable resources are those resources which cannot be renewed, okay, which cannot be renewed, which are non-renewable in nature. Basically the fossil fuels, okay, basically the fossil fuels, the different kinds of minerals and all, okay, they are the examples of non-renewable resources. For example, coal, petroleum, natural gas, iron ore, aluminium, bauxite and all, okay, these are the examples of non-renewable resources. So on the basis of exhaustibility, the resources can broadly be classified into two broad categories, that is the renewable resources and the non-renewable resources. So we just discussed about the two type. We just discussed about the classification of resources on the basis of origin and on the basis of exhaustibility. Now see, the third one. The third basis of classifying the resource is on the basis of ownership. Okay. On the basis of the ownership, the resources can be classified into four different categories, such as the individual resource, the community owned resource, the national resources and the international resources. Individual resources. See, those resources which are owned privately by individuals, okay, those resources which are owned privately by individuals are known as the individual resources. So you will find there are many resources, okay, which is being owned by a single person. For example, the house which you are having, that belongs to your parents, so it's an individual resource. Suppose you are having a well, and in that well you are having the water, so that is your individual resource. Okay, the car which you are having at your home, it's an individual resource. So those resources, okay, which is being owned by a single individual are known as the individual resources, whereas community owned resources are those resources which can be utilized or which can be used by all the members of a community. Okay, for example, the village playgrounds, the parks, okay, the burial grounds and all, these are the examples of community owned resources. Maybe in the municipal area you will find that the taps have been installed along the roads and all. Okay, so that taps supplies water, okay, to the people living in that particular locality. Okay, so it's a kind of community owned resources. Okay, in the villages ponds are there, the village wells are there, where all the people living in that villages has the right to utilize the water, okay, from those ponds and from the wells and all. Okay, so it's a kind of community owned resource. So once again I am saying you, okay, I am telling you that resources which are owned by a single individual are known as the individual resources, and the resources which can be utilized by all the members of a particular area or a particular community are known as the community owned resources. The next one, national and the international resources. National resources basically include any kind of resources which lies within the territorial border, okay, within the territorial boundary of our country, okay, are the national resources. So if you see the political map of India, so within the boundary of our country, whatever resources exist, okay, they are the national resources. Even the private property, okay, it is also a part of the national resources. If the government wants, they can acquire the private property, okay, from the individuals actually. So technically all the resources belong to the nation, and the country has legal power to acquire even private property or for public good. Okay, for example, roads, canals, railways, etc. These are all the examples of national resources. So not only on the land surface, but we are having the national resources in the oceans also. Okay, like from the coastline till 12 nautical mile, which is equivalent to 22.2 kilometer. Okay, so from the coastline till 12 nautical mile on the ocean water, okay, which is known as the territorial water. So resources which are found in this territorial water are also a part of the national resources. The next, international resources. There are some resources which can be found in the international water bodies and also, okay, in the open sea, and that particular area does not belong to any particular country. Okay, so those resources belong to the international organizations, international institutions, okay, and such resources are known as the international resources. The resources which belong to the open ocean, and no individual country can utilize these resources without concurrence of the international institutions, are considered as the international resources. So basically the international organizations, they has the right, okay, to grant use of these resources to some particular countries and all. Okay, so this was the third basis of classifying the resource, okay, that is on the basis of ownership. So on the basis of ownership, the resources can be classified into 4 different categories: individual, community, national and international resources. The next one and the last basis of classifying the resource, on the basis of status of development. So resources, okay, basically whenever we talk about the natural resources, okay, they are at the different stages of development. Okay, so on the basis of the status of development, the resources can be classified into 4 different categories, such as the potential resource, stock, developed resource and the reserve. Okay, potential resource. Resources which are found in a region but have not been utilized are known as the potential resource. Okay, so there are certain areas where resources are available, but those resources, utilization of those resources has not yet started fully. Okay, so such resources are known as the potential resource. For example, in Rajasthan and Gujarat, we have a huge potential of generating solar and wind energy, but generation of the solar and wind energy has not yet started fully, okay, in the state of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Okay, so it is an example of potential resource. The next one is the developed resources. So there are some resources which has been developed fully, okay, means their quality and the quantity has been surveyed. Suppose we have discovered a new coal field, okay, the surveying of this coal field has been done, and we have estimated that how much amount of coal is available, okay, and what is the quality of the coal, okay. So that kind of resources are known as the developed resources. So resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity have been determined for utilization, okay, such resources are known as the developed resources. For example, coal, petroleum and all. Okay. The next is stock. Stock is a kind of resource, okay, which is available in the environment, but we don't have the appropriate technology to utilize it, okay. So materials in the environment which have the potential to satisfy human needs, but human beings, they do not have the appropriate technology to access these resources, are included among stock. Okay. For example, water. Water is a combination of two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. But the present technology is not enough, okay, to extract hydrogen and oxygen gases from this water actually separately. So that is why it is considered as a stock. Okay. Whereas reserve are just a part of the stock, okay, but with the present technology we can utilize it. So the water, which is a kind of stock resource, the same water is being utilized with the present technology for generating hydroelectricity, okay. So it's a kind of reserve actually, okay. So these are the 4 different types of resources on the basis of status of development, that is the potential resource, the developed resource, the stock and the reserve. Okay, so this is what about the term resource and the classification of resources. So we came to know about what does the term resource mean and what are the different bases of classifying the resources.